when you see coronavirus, the global economy, supply chains, how will this fundamentally change the economy?
Firstly, it's got to shrink the economy because, one, we're just either not able to spend or we're not going to get the goods and services that we were getting previously. And then the knock-on effect to those less developed countries that rely on that spend is going to come. So how big and how long that goes on for is a hard read. It's whether how quickly they can contain this, whether it turns into a full-blown pandemic or it just gives us a shot across the bows that we can deal with. I've not heard of people coming up with cures yet. So unless we're starting to look at that, because you can guarantee the strain will evolve, right? So where we are now, unless they can do something quickly, that it's going to get worse.
Welcome back, Renegade Inc. I'm joined by Alan Day, State of Flux. Cassandra, really, insofar as you sat there in March 2020 and perfectly predicted what was going to happen with our supply chain woes. Maybe you were a little bit early, but you were bang on the money.
Thank you. Yeah, unfortunately for the punter, I was, but we've definitely seen shortages in supermarket shelves. We've seen petrol shortages, lorry driver shortages. So all those supply chain effects that we talked about March last year have definitely happened.
And costs, inflation rising, costs going up.
Costs going up, and costs will continue to go up as we see shortages filter through the marketplace.
What can we do about it? What can the punter do about it? Because it seems to me that the punters that sitting is now looking at empty supermarket shelves and their hands are tied.
Yeah, I think in terms of, unfortunately for the punter, there is not much choice in terms of prices are going to go up. I think the consumer behaviour piece needs to be looked at. So
why will that change? Does it have to change?
I think it has to change. I think it absolutely has to change. We have lived in a world where it's okay to just consume and throw away, and with prices going up, I just don't think that's a sustainable model. So
the environment breathes a sigh of relief.
It does, yeah, it does. But we've still got a long way to go on that front. And I think, yes, it will be driven by the consumer, but ultimately we need to play in, organisations and their supply chains, most specifically the procurement and how they're buying from their suppliers to drive those behaviours down through the supply chain.
Is it now super clear for CEOs and people in business and the consumer to say, actually, pre-pandemic, we were so complacent. We just thought that we could boss these relationships with procurement people, supply chains, and because we're a big brand, we call the shots. Have the chickens come home to roost now, where people and CEOs are realising, actually, we've got to treat our suppliers well? We actually need relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's starting to be a recognition of that. We use a term of, are you a customer of choice for your key suppliers? And interestingly, often that's not been in big business lexicon. It's just not something that they've thought about. If you flip it and you look at the luxury brands who know that they need to look at working closely with their suppliers, they talk about, creating supplier loyalty and things like that. Big business,
forget it.
Yeah, their focus is we're big. Of course, they want to work with us.
But that cavalier attitude hasn't worked, has it?
No, we're seeing it come home to roost in terms of they're bearing the brunt of the shortages. They're not getting the scarce resource. They're not getting the A team from the suppliers. Suppliers are saying, well, why? I now have a choice on who I sell to.
Right.
And it's not going to be the people that have treated me badly over this period.
I bet the first thing they say is, we'll just give you more money. And you say, well, it's not about that. It's actually about creating a relationship here and an efficiency. It's not, you can't just throw money at this.
Correct, yeah. And after a while, what money? Because, that's got to come from the consumer ultimately. So, and one of the problems is the workforce has grown up without inflation, and now they're trying to create supplier relationships in an inflationary environment.
And they've never traded in those environments.
Not really.
Because it's like sort of city traders who always think that the Fed or other central banks will bail them out. I think if we get it wrong, ultimately, someone will come to the rescue.
The consumer will be paying in this instance,
but actually, that's not good enough, is it?
It's not, and we need to look at efficiencies, processes, how that's being done to improve that. And so you're seeing the term supply chain rise just because now the consumer's feeling it.
You're having your moment in the sun.
Yeah, we're finally having our moment.
Finally, the rock stars of business, the supply chain guys, right?
Been waiting a long time for
that. But it does also mean that with that focus, the visionary or competent CEO can actually start putting focus where you're asking them to and create those efficiencies, which ultimately the consumer benefits.
Yes, yeah. So hopefully what we'll see is investment in process, technology, training of people on how to put in relationships, how to make them structured, consistent, what I call industrial strength. So relying on
what I call business 101.
Wow, yeah, but
that's been neglected.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
So you've been screaming about this for ages. People are at last saying, actually, this guy's onto something here.
Well, hopefully, yes. Certainly we're starting to see a renewed focus in supply chain. We're seeing investment in it. We're seeing it on the CEO's radar. It's not about the new shiny marketing activity. It's not about the new IT system.
Right.
Actually, we now need to sort out the supply chain.
Famously, State of Flux, your business puts out your report every year. Give us 2 or 3 stats out of this, which is growing and protecting value, that have shocked you.
Yeah, the 2 that have absolutely shocked me. One is that 2/3 of organizations, so the majority of organizations, are using the relationship to mitigate supply chain risks.
What does that mean in non-technical terms?
So they're relying on having a good relationship with their suppliers to get over supply chain disruptions and risk in their supply chain, which is pretty scary when they haven't invested in the relationship. The other one is that if you're good at supply management, you're 5 times as likely to have faster speed to market for your product or service.
5 times?
5 times, not 1 or 2, 5 times. So incredibly compelling to be good at this, yet, and here's another stat, only 12% of organizations are in what we call the leadership group in this. So
look at all the upsides. CEOs and business types now listening to this, like, well, just focus there.
Yes, yeah. I mean,
it's such an easy edge. And we don't have to do the marketing, the IT system, the thing that we just got to be better at this.
Well, and it's even more than that. We know, and this has been consistent for the 13 years we've done the research, that if you're good at this, you're going to get between 3 and 6% additional benefit over and above what's contracted. So if you think of the inflation that's going on, if you could just rely on that to mitigate it, absolutely. We did an interesting project with a client, a very good client of ours, one of the UK top banks, and we actually took the role of an end customer and walked through the service.
How did that go?
Well, yeah, it was really interesting.
Mm.
But what was key to it was about 70% of the end service was not provided by the bank. It was provided by suppliers. You walk into a branch, the teller is probably a temp from a supplier. The credit card that you receive has been processed, and that's a supplier. The envelope that it came in is a supplier. The call centre you ring up is a supplier. All these things come,
but we don't look after suppliers.
Yeah, we don't. So not only do we not look after them, we forget that probably we've got another 40 to 50% of workforce not working directly for us, but for suppliers as well.
Every business school in the world should be sitting you in front of this and saying, listen to this guy, because actually if you focus on this, you naturally, all the other economic indicators, business indicators are going to go in the right direction. Why are they not doing it? Why are the case studies? Why aren't we talking more about this?
I think the city has something to answer for on that.
What, share price?
In terms of short-termism and
Q1, Q2.
Correct. Yeah. Because look, let's face it, relationships take a while to build. They rely on good people, but they also rely on process and structure and governance, which people haven't been doing. if I was a CEO, I'd be asking myself, how many of my key suppliers am I seeing each year? And, really there should be a top kind of 30 or 40 suppliers that the business can't function without. That the CEO should make time for. And so if you're a CEO watching and you're not seeing these suppliers, get off your backside and see them.
I was going to say, go off the golf course. The backside's probably. So, Alan, we bring you back. You were right, March 2020. You were early, but correct. What now? Give us some predictions of what you see going forward specifically the business world, but also associated with consumers.
Well, I think we are going to see some more shortages. I think unfortunately they're here to stay. Despite rhetoric from central banks, etc., I think it's not.
You're telling me central bankers lie.
It's not going to get better anytime soon. I think it's going to get worse, which for the consumer means belt tightening, and of course there is a knock-on effect when consumers tighten their belt. Then things get worse again, so that spiral begins. Hopefully we'll see some investment in supply chain and procurement. I know I'm hoping for that for my business, but probably more importantly, we need to do it as a global community
because it's been so woefully neglected.
Correct. Yeah. And in a perfect world, we will get some efficiencies from that, which should help mitigate some of the challenges. Because let's face it, it's been a very inefficient supply chain previously. So I'm hoping we're going to see that. But I expect those things will take 2 to 5 years really to iron out.
Leave us with some optimism.
Well, I think the good thing is that we've seen an upturn in training people and focusing on improving people's skills, which even in the lockdown environment is still able to happen. Right. So I think investment in people is going to go up.
What's the thing that business should be doing? Relationships, investment in people, supply chain management.
I'm glad I'm offering some really unique insights.
No, but they are unique, but because they've been so neglected.
Well,
because people were just blasé. Like, oh well, we're making money. Doesn't matter.
Well, what's really interesting is, again, in the research we look at, whether people are trained, and we've looked at what people are getting trained in, and the only thing that, and this is for procurement people, the only thing that they're getting more training in than they need is negotiation. And the thing that they need the most is kind of relationship, trust building, collaboration, and they're woefully under-trained in that area. So hopefully we'll see an increase of skill sets, which will then help the consumer ultimately as it flows through the supply chain.
Alan, always a pleasure. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.